Once again, people in power have swung the axe and cut a Division One men's swim team. California Baptist University has just got the news that its men's swim team is cut. Now, Cal Baptist has men's and women's swimming as well as water polo for men and women. Hopefully, these other three programs sustain themselves. But I'm going to ask you to listen to Coach Steve Friederang. For many years, he was an assistant coach and volunteer coach and recruiting coach there. And Cal Baptist has an interesting history in the swimming world. It started as a Cal Baptist has an interesting history in college swimming. It started as an NAIA school and won an NAIA championship. Then it went to D2, eventually winning an NAIA championship, and then evolved into a D1 program. And perhaps that was part of the problem. I want you to keep listening because I'm going to ask you to sign in so that you can share your stories and your reactions to this news. And maybe there's some specific updates that you'd like to share to the broader world, and we'll help amplify those remarks.
Yeah, I think it was January 2nd that it was announced, and it was a surprise to me, but of course, a lot of people knew I coached there, so I'm getting tons of people telling me and then asking me, and then I'm telling them. So I'm not the focal of it, believe me, but I've been there for a while. It's a sad state of affairs. They only cut their men's, at least there's a women's team. They owe me a couple $100. I was like, wait, am I going to get that back? Because we sell them these swim elastics where they pull themselves across or they pull them across the pool and stuff. But yeah, it's a sad situation. I just touched base for a second with Rick Rowland, who's still there. He had a stroke and he's still hard to understand sometimes and recovering from that. But he is recovering from it. He has been coach emeritus, but not really on the deck, but still valuable asset and a lot of fun still. And cheer Dodgers fan and everything. It's hard to look back and go, wow, that whole program's gone now. The team was brand new when he came in. His dad was there. He'd come from Pepperdine. And so he kind of grew that team from nothing. Pool was still being dug. It was unfortunately always problematic. The school has never been intelligent when it comes to that sort of thing. And so they saw somebody else's neat, I don't know what it is, 50-yard pool or something, and thought that was cool with a little, round part with steps on it on the end. And it could have been 50 meters and just a few more strokes of the shovel. They didn't do that. So they already got that wrong. By the time he walked in, he said it was too late to make any changes. They didn't ask anybody intelligent. That would have made a big difference. Even in terms of finances, they could have run a lot more meets and stuff like that, stuff that they would never think about because they're all within themselves. But in this case, what happened, it looked like, and it felt like, I was there when it was NAIA, and they had never won anything. So I brought them a swimmer I had coached year round. It was their first swimmer to break 20 in the 50 free and set the NAIA record in their record, and they won for the first time. They were always second to somebody. And then I think they won from then on until we became Division II. And the reason for that wasn't even swimming at all or any of the small sports, but the big time sport, basketball. And so they like basketball. And baseball, of course, has been great there, but then that's a secondary sport. But basketball, and they built this giant gymnasium, which was great. And I don't know what they thought when they were going from Division II, where we, as a swim team, second year took second in Division II for the men. The women weren't quite as fast at that time. And then we went Division I, kind of like too fast, and it took a lot to go Division I. You had to jump through a lot of hoops. I went from being able to be a recruiting coach where I could put somebody in the water and film them. And a lot of times, this is the unfortunate state of affairs of USA swimming still, is that we don't film enough. We get swimmers come in there that, actually one of the coaches at Riverside right now, he was a 5,900 breaststroker. During his recruiting trip, we filmed him underwater and showed him a bunch of things he could improve. He was at junior college level. So he came in as a sophomore with a 59 and 100 breast and went 54 and 53 in the relay by the time he left us. So we were that kind of school. And of course, that fits right into what I do, which is performance improvement, as opposed to just winning meets. When I have somebody faster, like he was very talented. Anyway, so then he was gone by the time he had set the NAI record, and now he's gone. We go to Division II. We do well in Division II, but Division I had all these rules, and one of which is you can't put a swimmer in the water if you have them on a recruiting trip. There's a lot you can tell with just especially when you have my eye from 50 years of experience doing this is biomechanics stuff. I can tell, hey, this guy doesn't have any ankles, and we're not going to expect him to do well in relays. Or this guy has phenomenal ankles, but he doesn't know it because he's never seen himself underwater. And stuff like that, where we could recruit on the basis of sort of that, and then of course character, which Rick was awesome at character. Not all the athletes who came to us stayed awesome at character or were awesome, but he was not only a good judge of it, but a good mentor of character. First guy I've ever seen pray before and after practices and stuff like that. But anyway, then Division I was more difficult, obviously, to recruit. Now if you've got a really good swimmer, there's a lot of people after him. I knew it was going to be more difficult, and they had to provide something that they were I'm saying the coaching staff was kind of unwilling and unable to provide, as far as really amplifying what we could do technically, putting a weight room on the deck, which is one thing I really wanted. I really wanted them to go in and out of the pool. I wanted us to be able to do things that you would do in a training center. They have a pretty good weight program, and they got one of the Stanford weight coaches. So they liked him and they liked what he was doing, and I sort of did. So kind of a lot of injuries. So it was really time for me to got as far as I could, in mentoring Rick, who was basically a very strong water polo coach who chose to be a much more focused swim coach. And so over the years, when I first went there, and for quite a few years, he was the head women's and men's water polo coach and the head women's and men's swim coach. So he had 4 programs, and we would often take swimmers from the polo program just at the end of their season, which was into our swim season. And they'd throw them to me because they had front end of their stroke because of water polo, and I had to build the back end again and give them length and right away because they were going to meet like the next weekend. That was part of my job there. But by the time this all happened, Rick was the head coach of both, and now he was the co-head coach of both after his stroke, with Jim in as the head coach. So I haven't talked to them. I can't tell you any more than that I know, but I do know their history. And I do know that the biggest mistake they could have made was to go Division I. Unfortunately, NCAA has so many stinking rules, and one of which is, I guess, that if you turn Division I in one sport, you're Division I across the board. And it's one thing for us to try to be a big fish in a big pond in basketball, but all the smaller sports had more difficulty. We lost wrestling, and I think it's golf too for the men. And because of Title IX, the women are still there. Because of basketball and baseball having a lot of men, I think they have to do that. It's a sad state of affairs. I think NCAA in general is a sad state of affairs. I think part of this, of course, and this, is that money now goes to the athletes who are providing for the popularity of the school and the money revenues that come in from the media. And so I think part of the problem of all of us is that now you had money from the big sports to go, from the sports that are making a little money, that went to the smaller sports, and now it just isn't. So I think they should have been a lot more careful about how that was allocated, because it's not a profit if it's not a profit. If the basketball or football team profits, and yet to run the whole university, that profit has to be spread out. That's, I think, reasonable. The university provides the atmosphere and the possibility for them to be recognized by the media. And so it seems to me that a lot of that money should be there. Now, should the university take all of that and put it in whatever pocket? No, I think there should be, percentage rules and allocations that make sense. If Congress needed to get involved, which it thought it did, it probably needed to take all of that into consideration, but I don't think it did. I think it just said, well, it's just not fair that these athletes who are working their butts off at 18 to 22 years old and responsible for money coming into the college should not be remunerated. And I think that was reasonable, but it seems to me it should be enough to run the other sports, a lot of the other sports from the other programs that don't, the popularity isn't there to make money on the people watching them, either on media or in person. That's my opinion, and I'm welcome to it. I think when you look at a collegiate environment, you should see academics, obviously, first and foremost, which was kind of funny about Cal Baptist anyway, because you can get a full scholarship in many sports at Cal Baptist, but you cannot really get a full scholarship academically, which I think has always been strange to me at that university. And I love the university. My kids got pretty close to full scholarships academically, looking at different avenues, most of which was Cal Baptist. So I love them, and they were good to me. But you kind of have to look at stuff like that and go, wow, they already had a problem of putting sports before Division I before, and now it's affecting the smaller sports. So it's a complex thing, but it actually shouldn't be so hard. That's all I know. When I say so far, I mean so far the women, so far water polo, and there are men's and women's water polo. So as far as I know, that hasn't changed. You can go on their website and see what their logic was, but part of it, what they said was, in order for us to be competitive in whatever we're trying to be competitive in, we had to cut some sports to do that. So does that mean that the men were doing so poorly? Actually, the men were doing better in Division I than the women. We had a guy make, I don't think any of the women made Division I diving. We had a guy really high in diving, and we had a guy really high in swimming. He scored. He was 16th, 14th place or something like that. And Remy, and we would have had others, but even having a relay that made it would have been difficult. Division I's Division I. It is what it is. There's just not many polo teams. So I think you can go, and whether or not the athletic director's head's on the line if they don't win or anything like that. But there was just no way in Division I they were ever going to be high enough. That's what's so great about Division II and about Division III and about NAIA is most of the swimmers in Division III, especially in NAIA, love to swim. They're not on a scholarship. I don't think any of them in Division III, I don't think it's allowed. And they love to swim. My swimmer that went to Caltech in Division III, he swam all 4 years and loved it and got 2 degrees from Caltech, and he probably didn't miss a workout. They traveled and stuff like that. It wasn't all that expensive. The coach's head was never on the line. He was like, you do well. If you don't do well, do your best. And you're a smart school, so be smart and all that. But I miss those. Having done all 3 at CBU, I miss those times. Oh, and by the way, CBU also said, can they have a club team now that, like UC Irvine has a club team that a couple of my swimmers actually are that I'm working with personally are going to one of them's already on and the other one's going in next year as pre-med majors, and they're on the club team there, but they go to USA swimming meets and compete against maybe some other club teams. And they enjoy it. They have a pretty enjoyable, good experience. They're coached and everything. But CBU said no, just no. No reason, just no. So there it is. We're always one of the top swim teams as far as academics went. We ran 5 workouts a day so we could have the swimmers that had to go to whatever they were in, architecture or the really difficult majors, chemical engineering, or any of the engineering tracks were very hard to be an athlete, but we made it possible, and all of them graduated well. Most of them went on to advanced degrees, and our average GPA was really high. It gives people that are academically minded, spiritually minded, that other part of the equation, which is the physical body, because you don't do anything for anybody if your body's not working very well. And we brought a lot of people to Christ as far as that went, and that's part of the mission of CBU. You don't have to be Christian to go there. And so sometimes people come out with, look, I like this environment. I like these coaches. I like these other swimmers who seem to be true to their faith and true to, doing the best with people. But so that worked well too, and that's all gone. CBU should be, I think, rethinking about whether it should be Division I at all. It's a lot of stress.
Let's listen to the words of a Facebook friend, Jason, that are brought to life by 11 Labs.
I talked with a former USA Swimming Chief Executive Officer a handful of years ago at a local swim committee meeting and asked, "Why are you so concerned about getting more female participation in this sport? Swimming is already female-dominated. 6% more female participants than male, and in many states that difference is much larger." I brought up the growing incongruence in collegiate swimming and how not having enough opportunities for boys and men to continue to compete would hinder the sport's growth. I was shot down so fast by coaches and the CEO. Nobody wants to admit that maybe we have swung too far in the equality issue, and anyone who questions it gets treated like some sort of bigot. The interpretation of Title IX is absurd. It was never solely an athletics bill. It called for an equal amount of opportunities, not just in athletics. Then, through a series of logical fallacies and cognitive distortion, those in positions of power assumed that women wanted to play sports at the same rate as men. Maybe that's true today as we've turned our boys away from masculinity, but it wasn't in the 1970s. Smaller, non-commercialized sports are going to face continual challenges amongst recruitment of boys when there isn't any opportunity at a higher level. But hey, it's better to virtue signal than be honest about what's going on.
To close out this topic for today about Cal Baptist University, I want to invite you to the website for the podcast, Heavy or Not. And I want you to put in your name, an email, and a comment so that we can stay in touch and we can invite you to upcoming webinars. We're going to host 3 or 4 in the next week or 2, and you'll be able to come and leave your comments so that we can start to collect it, amplify your voice, and get the full picture here as to what's happening at this cut men's swim and dive program. So the website is hon.lap.red. HON is heavy or not, .lap, like you're swimming a lap, LAP, .red. So please check in with us. When you arrive at that homepage, you'll see a form on the left. I'd love to stay in touch. Thanks for doing all you do for raising participation among sports and fitness and our community.